To better understand what Dialogflow is and what it can do, we are going over two main aspects, namely intents and entities. An intent is basically a training phrase, a series of training phrases that let Dialogflow know and understand the purpose of the user's text input. This allows you to come up with a better response, either by a text message or sending them to a specific flow inside of UChat. An entity are basically objects that can store values, unique values that you can grab from the user's input. So let's say a user is searching for a particular car and names the car brand, the car year, and the car type, the model. You can capture all of these informations with entities. You can create a new entity or you can use any of the system default entities. You can either create an entity right here by pressing the button Create Entity. You can give it a name. Let's say we are going with car brand. And then we can go with several options. We can define synonyms, and as you can see, you can choose to define synonyms that will map to reference values or just list values including references to other entities. You can also go with regex p entity. You can also go with allow automated expansion. And you can also go with fuzzy matching. And fuzzy matching means that if a user mistypes a certain word, the entity is still recognized and you will be able to grab the information and store the information of that user. To provide a synonym in this case, for example, car brand, this could be an Opel, right? And you can also provide a synonym. From brands, and Dialogflow will be able to pick up on this car brand entity. So as soon as a user mentions any of these brands, Dialogflow will match that as a car brand entity and store that unique value for you. If you want to go and create an intent, you can go to the Intents tab on the left hand menu and you can go with Create Intent. Now you can add context, you can add events, but for this course we are only going to create training phrases. You can give the intent a name, and now we can have some training phrases. So for example, I am searching for an Opel from 2007, for example, right? And you can then press enter, and this is your first training phrase. You will see that Dialogflow now picks up on the 2007 and marks it as an entity date period, as you can see here. You can also create your own entity if you like to by just going with the button Create New. You can say OK, and this brings you back towards the entity name. And as you can see, the stored value for 2007 is then automatically being exported to this entity. So let's say we are going with the car year. And you can list all the different kinds of years, right? So if you only have specific years for only a specific model, that's something you can do as well. If we go back to intents, however, and go with some more training phrases. So I just went ahead and created a few training phrases, and as you can see, because I also created the entities, you will see that some text are highlighted from each training phrase. So if we press on this one, you will see, do you have any A4 from 2010? It recognizes the A4 as a car model entity, and the car year has been marked as 2010. And you will see this happening with other as well. If we go towards the sentence, do you have an Opel from 2005? You will see that it recognizes the car brand as Opel and the car year as 2005. If we scroll downwards towards the action and parameters, we can also manage the parameters and action. If pressed, you will see an overview of the catched entities so far. So we have the parameter name, car brand, we have the entity, And we have the value as created by Dialogflow itself. We can also have certain requirements. So if we state that we need all of these questions to be able to fulfill this intent, to complete this intent itself, then we can do so as well. We can also define the prompt. So if the question needs to be asked about the car brand and that's missing, we can go towards the define prompt action. And we can enter a question. We can also do multiple variations. Once done, just press close. And you can do the same for the other two entities as well. Once you gave up all the defined prompts, you can move on to the next step. And the next step will be the responses. You can press add response. And from here you have two options. You can either do a text response. And this is a text response that will be handled by Dialogflow itself. Or you can also say add a response. And from this you can also go with a custom payload. And this custom payload allows you to connect to a specific block inside of your own chatbot. In the next video, we're going to see how this custom payload works. Let's first save this intent. And we can also try this intent out as we have prepared it right inside of Dialogflow. If you go to the top right, we can also try it out directly inside of Dialogflow. So we can say something like, do you have a BMW? And then you will see that the next question that is going to be asked is, what is the model, right? Because we now already explained the car brand, and now it's asking for the model. Because if we take a look here under the actions and parameters, after the car brand, we are going to ask for the car model. So if we say something like, I prefer a X7. And from what year are you looking? So you can see that Dialogflow is now going down the list of the required actions and parameters, because now it's asking for the year. So if we say something like year 2010, there we go. And the default response is now been set to not available. But if we go towards the intent on the right hand side, you will see that all the entities have been stored. You will have the car model, which now contains the X7. You have the car brand, which contains BMW. And you also have the car year, which now contains 2004. So as you can see, all the actions and parameters have now been set. The next step is to either do a text response or a custom payload. And that is something that we will cover inside of the next video.